Hello, my name is Guna Petkovic. I'm account manager here at Birch, and with me today is Shahbaz Khokhar, a CEO and founder of Venture Beyond, our UK-based e-commerce growth agency. And we're gonna talk about today our partnership and best practices for Birch. How do you structure your digital strategies across clients?
So our main channel is Meta. That's literally where we spend 99% of our time, effort, and spend. So everything is focused around that really. We build our own creative, we do our own media buying, and we also build landing pages and do some CRO on landing pages. So when it comes to like the digital strategy, generally speaking, it's focused on Meta, and then we do some brand term search campaigns on Google as well occasionally. So most of the strategy is based around testing on Meta and then scaling up, winning tests. And we're always working with D2C e-commerce brands. So, brands where, they're directly selling through the website. We don't really do much lead generation, but we do some stuff where the lead gets generated and then it converts within a few days after because there's, some kind of a multi-step process. But generally speaking, we're doing conversion-based campaigns. We literally use Birch to scale a lot of campaigns, and we had like one particular day when I remember we spent like 380k on a campaign, and like that had like multiple different obviously budget changes and things happening all at the same time. It was during Q5. These were one ad account. We spent on like one day we did like 600k revenue. And like I tell you now, that would not have been possible unless we had Birch running the system, because otherwise the media buyer would have had to been there 24 hours watching every single ad set and every single ad, and it's just not possible. When an account is running at scale and when you're doing so much testing and you've got so many ads running, it's physically impossible for a media buyer or even a team of media buyers to catch everything. So that's why we use Birch. And I'm not just plugging Birch, like we genuinely use it. We've been using it for years. It's how we've scaled accounts to spending, the ones that are spending like multiple 7 figures a month. So we run, for example, stop loss rules, and that's pretty standard across all the accounts that we run. So stop loss is basically if we're not hitting a certain ROAS target or certain objective. It could even be like cost per lead or whatever it is that we're targeting in a particular day. And if a certain amount of the budget has been already spent for the day, then we'll pause the ad. And then what we do is we mark the ad as like stop loss has kicked in, and then at midnight we then restart the ad to give it another chance the next day. So that's what we call a stop loss. That's like one of the most useful automations that we use inside Birch. And then from there we use what we call a hard pause. So hard pause is more kind of like a similar thing, but we look back 3 days. So this is now for an ad that might have been running for a few days. We look back over the last 3 days' performance. And then from there, we make an assessment. Okay, did it hit the target? Did it hit the objective we were going for? And if it doesn't, we hard pause it. And then we do a complete stop. I can't remember what they call it now, but a complete stop, which is basically we look back 7 days. So you've got to remember with ad data, there's some delayed attribution. So on day one, you might see a certain revenue, but then by day 2 or day 3, you're going to see an uplift in that. After 72 hours, that's it. It's done. You don't really see any delayed attribution from what we've seen any time after that. So that's why we're looking back 3 days. Also, when we set the targets and things within Birch, we're usually speaking, it's not always the exact target we're going for. Sometimes it's a proxy for the target. So for example, if we're trying to get to a 1.4 ROAS overall, 1.4 MER or ROAS, we might actually set the rules at like 0.9 or 1.0 on the day, because we know that delayed attribution is going to kick in over the next few days, and that's going to lead to an uplift, right? So the rules are not always based around exactly the target that we're aiming at overall. And I'm going into a bit of depth here, but we actually, so that uplift between what you see on the ad account on the day versus what the ad ends up performing at, we actually calculate that uplift, and we calculate that on a rolling basis. We work out an average last 7 days. We also look at last 3 days, last 7 days, average of what that uplift is, and we're continuously monitoring that. And it does fluctuate quite a bit, but we use the average number of that to determine what the uplift should be to then set the rules for the objective within Birch. So generally speaking, we have best practices. We have a stop loss, we have a hard pause, and then we have a complete stop. And that really helps us to automate some of the media buying. And then what else do we have? So we have budget scaling as well. So we have, so this is pretty standard across accounts. We might start with a budget on an ad set of $500. If it's a bigger account, it might be 3,000, something like that. And then if we see that an ad set is performing, we'll bump up the budget by 20% or 30%. We know and there's a difference of opinion between media buyers and the team, but we know it's not best practice to increase the budget multiple times in a day. But some media buyers have told me that they do that and it's not a problem. Others have said that they allow it to go back into learning, and sometimes it does go back into learning on the second time or the third time you increase the budget. Sometimes it doesn't, and it's kind of a bit random. Others have said they try to avoid that from happening, so they cap how many times it happens in a day. But yeah, so like all this stuff we do inside Birch, the level of granularity that we get in the rule system in Birch is way more in depth than what we can do in Ads Manager. So that's generally speaking the standard rules that we use. For the bigger accounts, we've got lots of ads running. You can very quickly lose what's going on in the ad account. So to help our media buyers to manage the process of like just general day-to-day managing of the ad account, we use a lot of emojis. So we tag an emoji onto the ad name or the ad set name to say that a certain action has happened. So I'll give you an example of what one of our media buyers does. So when he does a bid change, so for example, if he changes the cost cap on a particular ad set, he will mark that he's made a change. He actually uses moon emojis. So he starts with I think a quarter moon on day one after the change has been made. And then on day two, after the change has been made, he changes it to like a half moon. And then on day three, he puts it as a full moon. So this just means that when he's in the Ads Manager, he can filter very quickly by full moon. It can be like, okay, these are the changes I made 3 days ago. Here's the change I made 2 days ago. And it allows him to be able to see, what the impact of the change was, or to have a look back at like what happened to the things that he changed, and to do a bit of an analysis on that to see, did it work, did it not work? So I'd say like appending emojis is actually a big part of our strategy of how we use Birch, because it really enables the media buyers to get clarity on some of the changes. Of course, you've got the activity log in Ads Manager, but it's like super difficult to navigate and use, right? Like you've got to click into the ad and look through it all, and like you're never going to be able to track everything. Like you can't filter by that, right? So generally speaking, yeah, we use Birch for, let's say, tagging, and off the back of that, reporting as well.
Thank you. I like how you listed three key, let's say, features and factors that mostly clients are using Birch for. So that's like saving time, with kind of replacing some of the manual workload, also cutting at cost with your stop loss rule structures, and also scaling. I think those are the three key factors that are most important to our clients, and I really love how you implement it and how you're using it, and thank you for the full explanation.
Actually, that's another best practice one that we have, is a CPM spike. So Meta loves to have like a random bug every few months and like spend crazy money, and like we get some refund sometimes. I think one day we overspent by like 50K in like a couple of hours.
Wow.
Yeah, and I think we got most of it back. But as you can imagine, the client or the brand is like not in a happy state when that happens. So we use a number of different things to protect against that. On the website side, we have Better Stack, which just checks conversion rate on the website, checks if there's any pages down. We have a Slack notification come up if anything there is happening. You can also integrate Better Stack into a sheet, and then from a sheet into Birch, which we didn't actually do yet, just because like we use a Slack channel and we're always checking it anyway. But you can definitely do that. So that kind of covers protection against the website breaking or any issues with conversion on the website, if there's like a bug in the code. And then in terms of Meta, so when there's a bug in Meta, which definitely happens, we have a CPM spike protection rule. So if CPM spike more than, I don't know what everyone has got set as a parameter, but let's just say if it doubles or triples or something, the ads automatically pause, just to protect ourselves from like overspending.
And what's the time frame that you're using within that specific rule?
It'll be like last hour or like last 3 hours, something like that.
Thank you for sharing this with me about automations.
In the past as well, I just mentioned that we did it because I know you guys have got a pretty cool Sheets integration that you can hook up data inside a sheet directly into the rule system. And we use Sheets a lot, but we to hold our data, or at least our day-to-day data. So we use Supermetrics to pull the data in from Meta, and we also use Windsor. So there's two different data pullers that we use. We use Windsor for BigQuery, and we use Supermetrics for sheets. Wins are just cheaper, and but Supermetrics is like overall pretty good tool. So we continue to use that one for sheets, but then from sheets you can use that to do some automations to then do some calculations to then plug into your automation. So in the past, when we used server-side tracking, when iOS 14 all happened and like tracking was the data on Ads Manager was like all over the place, and couldn't really trust it. We were depending more on server-side tracking, and so we were using some more complicated rules where we'd calculate something in a sheet, and then from the thing that we calculated in the sheet, we actually plugged it into Birch, which was pretty good. We worked out that, for example, like for a particular ad, like what was the minimum performance across the different tracking methods. So we're looking at Meta, GA, and also Red Track, which is the server-side tracking that we're using at the time. And we were comparing all three, looking for the minimum number and then using that in the rule system. But yeah, that was I guess like an interesting use case that we used it for quite a while. But then Meta improved their reporting, and so we pulled out and we stopped doing that. But it's definitely something we'd consider again.
I think that rule executions from Birch side are reliable in that sense, and if you're having any external source that you're using and connecting to Birch. And regarding Birch and automation rules, do you customize them, the whole workflow per niche, or do you have some general universal framework that you can rely on and use for different clients?
Yeah, so I think, we leave the preference down to each individual media buyer within the team, but generally speaking, we start with some general best practice, and then they customize from there depending on the client circumstance and situation. You can apply the base principles to every client, kind of like the stop loss and the scaling and the the emoji stuff that we've talked about. But there are like little nuances that happen with different brands. Like, for example, we work on a telehealth brand where the conversion doesn't happen immediately on checkout. You get a lead, and the lead then goes and does a survey. The survey gets submitted to a doctor. The doctor then decides, should this person have a prescription? From there, a conversion event then happens. So you can imagine that the data on the conversion event is actually outside of Meta, and it's held somewhere completely separate. And we have a bunch of custom events that track that. So we actually have to look at the drop-off between like what is the cost per lead, and then, okay, from the leads that get converted, how many people complete the quiz, how many people get a prescription, how many people buy the product. So we're making a continuous estimate of like, what is the cost per lead that we're going for? So the objective there is a bit different. So we would apply some slightly different tactics. And I think there's different media buyers have different techniques or different preferences to how they manage. And what I've learned from doing business for a while is like, you can create a process, but it's better if people kind of adapt it a little bit for their own, so they can kind of make it their own, and then they really truly understand it. If you give everyone an exact blueprint and say, hey, just do exactly this, and this, the truth is they can't problem solve and fix things on the fly. And it's usually through, you start with maybe a general best practice of some of the set rules that we have, and then you kind of like navigate your way around the specific problems of a certain ad account. And then from there, the rules get tweaked and changed. I give you an example. So I was just speaking to two media buyers, and one of them said that they only put the stop loss in place on a day-to-day basis when the budget, 70% of the budget has been used. And another one told me, so this was 70% of 3,000, which is quite a lot of budget to spend if you're under target. But the thing is with that ad account, it's like a very big ad account, spending 2-3 million a month consistently. So you can lose a bit of money on ad sets because you're going to lose here and gain over here. So it's a very different strategy. I think with one of the other media buyers I spoke to, who's got a smaller account, I think they're spending $600-$650 a month. He said that basically an ad set might have a testing budget of $500, and from that $500, if an ad has got to $40 or $50 in spend and is below ROAS target, they'll allow the stop loss to kick in. So that's like 40 over $500 versus 70% of 3,000. So the rules themselves are the same, but the level at which the rule kicks in is different for each media buyer, and one is a percentage base and one is an absolute number.
I like how you explained how do you organize your team and how you allow them to fully dive into Birch. And I think that's the beauty of our product, where we do offer some pre-built templates and strategy suggestions, but we also allow this complexity and encourage you to actually use this as a script writing tool based on your outcomes and your KPIs, but I also like how you cherish this relationship within your team where they're allowed to not only use whatever you may be made before, but also like to encourage them as well to implement their own strategies.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty much part of our training. So we show them the standard set rules that we use, and we're like, hey, go and look at these rules, go and play around with them. We know Birch has got standard set of templates as well, which we mainly use for inspiration. So we look at them, we're like, okay, is there anything here we can learn from? And then we have our like, best practice rules. And then yeah, so from they start the account that way, and then they, based on the client situation, they tweak things and change things.
Yeah, of course. I mean, you have to follow the normal work flow that you're set up, but also you need to leave some space for
one of our company values is like test it and see, right? I'm always like, hey guys, just if we don't know what we're doing, if we're not sure, like if it's option A or option B, just test it. Like in the end, that's what we do, right? As media buyers and creative strategists, like our job is to keep testing and learning. Like you can contemplate as much as you want and build the perfect system, but unless you run something, you just don't know what's going to happen.
What is your general approach to creative management and testing?
Test lots of ads, find winners. We test a lot. Some of the smaller ad accounts we're running, we might be running an additional 50 ads per month. Net new creative. Some of the bigger accounts, we might be hitting 1,000 in a month. It really depends. So a mixture of images and videos, a big variety of different concepts. Doing some whitelisting from different pages. Sometimes we're testing the different articles that we run to as well. So we'll run to a landing page, run to an article, an advertorial, a listicle, the product page, the collection page. We're always testing, where we're actually running the ad to as well. So we almost like we're full funnel testers. We don't just test the creative, we also test landing pages, and also the advertiser itself, the page that's advertising. In terms of creative testing, yeah, we normally, it depends on the size of the budget as to like how much testing we do. Smaller budget, you can't really test as much because you have less ad spend to play with, and therefore like you've got to be a little bit, it's actually harder to scale a small account than it is to scale the bigger account. Like taking an account from 0 to 100k a month is like way harder than taking one from 100 to 200 or to 500, because you just have no learnings. You have no idea what's working and not working. So our general process, I've spoken about this publicly quite a lot, but we start with research. So we do a lot of deep research on Reddit, on reviews. We mine all of that. We use GPT to do some analysis on it as well. We gather all that. We have a bit of a research process where we just, our creative strategist basically trying to figure out like the consumer sentiment, what they're thinking, what their pain points are. We then move to the competitors to see what they're up to, for which we use foreplay. I also used, I've also recently built a library scraper myself, and we kind of analyze what's working there, like what's been running the longest. Some people run ads for a long time, but put like a very small budget on it just to throw the competitors off, because everybody knows that everyone's looking at the most number of active days. You've got to be a bit careful with that one. So then from there, we then come up with a bunch of ideas that we're going to prioritize for a sprint period. The sprint is usually a week or 2 weeks. So we'll have a number of ad sets. Each brief, each concept that goes into an ad set. Within each ad set, we have a number of different variations. So we create like a plan for 1 week or 2 weeks. And then from there, we go and brief them. So we brief them to our post-production team. Hopefully our post-production team has got the assets. If they don't, we'll go and get them from content creators or go and shoot them in our studio. From there, we then go and do the edits. It comes back for approval. Once it's come for approval, creative strategist approves it, client approves it if they need to. And then if it doesn't get approved, we go back in for revisions, and then it gets launched. So we kind of go through this continuous process of like research, ideation, creation, and then finally launch and analysis. And I will say we use Birch for ad launching as well. For around about 80% of our ad launches are done through Birch, just because it has templates and it's really straightforward to launch in there compared to doing it in Ads Manager, which can be clunky.
And about the performance that you just mentioned in the reporting, how do you recognize and how do you respond to ad fatigue?
Make more ads. You showed the fatigue over the average course of every single ad, and we worked out that basically by month 3, most ads have gone. In fact, 95% of ads don't even spend, don't even make any money. 5% of ads do make money and do scale. But when we look at the whole average, there's like a curve, but essentially after month 3, they're pretty much gone. So like month 2 is where most of the spend kicks in. And then month 3, it kind of comes down and comes down. The analysis is I always try and get the wording correct on this, but basically we worked out if we launch an ad in January, what percentage of the spend in January did it take? And then that same ad, what percentage of the total spend in February did it take up? So yes, ads do kind of scale very quickly at the beginning, but they won't take up, good ads scale quick at the beginning, but they don't take up a high percentage of your overall ad spend. To get it to take a high percentage of your overall ad spend, that usually happens in month 2 on average, and then a bit less in month 3 and a bit less in month 4. So ad fatigue is definitely something we're always thinking about. You can't just have like one winning creative and expect it's going to keep printing money. Like sometimes it does happen, but you can't live with that expectation because your performance is going to be extremely volatile. So you'll see the curve on this graph, right? And you need to keep launching. So every ad has got a half-life. In order to smooth out performance, you need to keep launching all these ads. So you need to continuously add all of these decaying ads into your launch queue, so that on average your performance really kind of flattens out. Otherwise, if you just launch an ad, it's working, and then you stop launching ads, then your performance is going to be like this, up and down, up and down, up and down. So you continuously need to be testing and adding new things in order to beat ad fatigue. Of course, you need to do iterations. Anybody online who says they're not doing iterations on like ads and you should only do new concepts is just, in my opinion, just talking nonsense for clout online. Like I've seen people talking about it, and I'm like, all the big advertisers are making like shitloads of iterations, and we make loads of iterations. When you've got a winning ad, you're making 50, 100, sometimes 1,000 iterations of the same bloody thing, right? But it's because it works. But you do need to be doing a good mix of new concepts and iterations. Iterations helps you get more yield out of a particular concept. And then new concepts is like where you're going to get your new kind of performance from. I remembered as well, we have some kind of, and I can't remember exactly how they work. We have some what we call hibernate rules as well within Birch, where it looks back to old ads and then it relaunches them. So we actually did a bit of a test where we got like really old ads that were previous winners and we relaunched them all, and they didn't really tend to do very well. But the ads that were, let's say, within the last 30 days, like 7 to 30 days that we might have paused, sometimes we'll give them a go again with the rule, so it automatically kicks in. So some other accounts, we have this hibernate rule where they automatically get relaunched after 7 days or 14 days, and sometimes those ones do actually perform.
I think I have one last question for you. How do you determine the benchmarks for creative performance for different clients?
Are they happy or are they sad? Like, did they make money or did they lose money? Like, is their bank balance going up or is it going down? Generally speaking, we start with the unit economics. So we look at, we get the complete cost of goods sold. We actually have a calculator sheet. Again, I'm happy to share all this stuff with people. Like, we've been using it for years. You can have it, I don't care. We basically calculate what the cost of goods sold is, what the shipping cost is, what all the taxes are, basically what all the entire costs are that make up the unit economics for that particular product that we're selling. And we do it at a SKU level, so we do it for every single product that the brand is selling. Sometimes we'll just bundle all products together and we will just set like one overall target. Sometimes we'll break things down into separate targets for different product categories, especially if there's like a big variance in the profit margins for different ones. And then more recently, I know that some of the media buyers have been using bid multipliers, but I think they're now getting displaced by value-based optimization. So this is something that Meta is really, really pushing this year. We went to go and see Meta in London earlier in the year, and that was like a big kind of thing for them. It's like, value-based optimization. So this is essentially optimizing the algorithm, not just for on-platform visible metrics, but for off-platform metrics. For example, you might use a profit-based metric. So instead of, let's say, looking at just return on ad spend on a revenue basis, you might look at profit. So like, how much profit did you make on that ad spend? So what was the return based on profit, not based on revenue? So Meta's released this. We're experimenting on it, experimenting with it with a few clients. It's definitely something that I think that they're pushing forward. So I'd say, like, to answer your question, it depends on the client. Sometimes they really know exactly what their target is, and it's precise. Sometimes we have to work it out for them. And we have to say to them, okay, look, like, how much money do you want to make? What contribution margin do you want to put in the bank this month to pay your overheads and to make some profit and to reinvest in the business? And then we kind of work backwards, like, what CPA are we targeting? What is the cost per acquisition that we're targeting to achieve your business goal? And then from the CPA, we set our cost caps in our testing campaigns. And we also use cost caps in our ASC campaigns. Although I know some of the bigger accounts, they're using some price volume and some cost caps on their on ASC campaigns.
Thank you, Shahbaz, for your time today. I really appreciate. I like to read everything you're sharing on your socials, and I got some inspiration from that.